for having me on this summit, by the way.
You are so welcome. I'm so glad that you said yes and that I get to see the inspiration behind your beautiful art. I love like there's just something so soothing and gorgeous and like captivating. When I see it come through my feed, I'm like, bless you, use my favorite colors, which
Oh,
really helps.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think that it really, you did the grid journal, didn't you? Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that really drew me into. I'm like, oh, now I'm paying attention. I'm seeing what she's doing, and I see how it really relates to the rest of your work too.
yeah. And I really like how the theme about this whole thing is about return to play, because I
Yeah.
feel like that is something that has really, really resonated with me throughout my whole journey as an artist as well.
Well, tell me more about that journey. Like, I see that you're like very multifaceted. You have a lot of interests, and you live in a beautiful country that must be inspiring all the time. So just tell us, everyone who's listening, like your story of how you ended up where you're at right at the moment.
Okay. So for me, I feel like like as a child, I never considered myself an artist, but I've always enjoyed colors. So yeah, and just because I can't paint like everyone else, like a lot of my talented friends, they can draw, they can paint really well, and I would always feel that, I cannot paint objects or nature and things like that. So I just never thought that art was for me, but I've always liked colors, and so I did photography when I started photography around 17, and I really enjoy photography, but I think what I enjoyed the most about it was the color editing process, like the post processing part
Mhm.
of it, and yeah, so I only started my abstract art journey in 2020 when my country went into a lockdown because of the
Yeah.
pandemic. And so art was my way of like escaping away from, whatever was going on with work and everything else, and just disappearing into this whole zone where I just dug out my old watercolors and I just started practicing putting colors on paper just for fun. I didn't really know anything about abstracts at the time. So for me, it was just, the joy of seeing like different colors interact with each other. And yeah, and it just kind of started from there. So
Yeah, well, 2020 did that for a lot of people, a renewed sense of creativity as an outlet. I mean, like we were all in lockdown to one level or another and
yeah,
needed that expression. And what I love is that you've just like exploded since then. Like I see your work and your account is growing and your talent is growing. It's really fun to watch like this journey. And I've seen it for many, but it's just really fun to see how many more people are coming back to creativity. I think
hmm
a lot of it is after the pandemic, we all realized that we can't let life pass us by,
yeah,
right? And so, of course, I chose Return to Play because things have been so serious. We just need that outlet, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
where does that leave some of your other hobbies? Like, do you just lean in more and more towards your art practice now?
I still like photography. Like I really love photography and writing. So I
Mhm.
used to do freelance photography, but now I do it more for myself, and I don't do like weddings and events anymore. And I do my other hobby, I guess, is writing. I used to do a lot of creative writing. I've always wanted to write a novel, a thriller novel, but I
Ooh,
haven't I
that's
haven't started
great.
on it. Yeah. So but I think most of my time right now has been dedicated more into my art because I recently went full time into making this a business as well.
Oh, you are full time. How
Yeah,
exciting.
just very recently in the last like 5, 6 months or so.
Yeah. So what are your goals with that? Like to sell your work? Are you looking towards doing more teaching or yeah?
I feel like I have a lot of goals for my business. I'm one of those very ambitious people. So, but yeah, definitely to sell more. That is the dream, to sell more, to take on more commissions, and also to be able to sell my work to like cafes or hotels. I think that would be really fun. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I did an in-person workshop for the first time last year, and that was really fun. So I'm looking at doing more workshops this year, and maybe also doing like an online workshop for the international audience as well.
Yeah. So is most of your audience Malaysian or do you have a global audience?
I think it's a good mix of local, and also a lot of them are also based in the US and internationally as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're reaching the far corners of the earth.
All
Tell me,
thanks to Instagram.
yeah. Tell me more about like your inspiration Well, you said with photography, a lot of what you loved was the after process of color editing. And so
Mhm.
that's informing your art style and and your color choices, I'm sure. But where is your inspiration coming from? Where the color palettes that you choose to use and just how it all comes together?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I feel like I get inspiration from a lot of random things. Like sometimes it's nature, sometimes I'm looking out at the sky and I just see colors, like the way colors are together, for instance, the cloud and the grayish sky, and I would think, oh, maybe gray and white and a little bit of blue would be a nice palette. But I think nature really helps as well when I go out and I go to parks because I really like earthy colors, like browns and greens. I think those are my favorite still. But recently I've been really drawn to the pinks. Like I love the painting in your background, by the way. I love
Thank
the colors, the peach and the oranges. So I feel like even with my art style, I do find myself um, really interested in trying new colors in this season as well.
But
Yeah.
I do notice that they have, instead of being like a pure saturated, they have a muted tone to them that are much
Mm,
more earthy and calming. And I love that aspect about how those colors come together. That's really gorgeous to me. And I
mm.
noticed you've been using some pops of gold.
Yes, I love gold. I
But
use it in almost all the paintings.
that's like the fun contrast to the soft colors.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think I've been using gold from the beginning, and I don't know if I've ever painted a painting without gold. It's like I have to always add gold in to everything I do.
There's
Yeah,
your little signature mark, a little bit of gold to make it
I
pop.
guess
I
so.
love it. Well,
Thank you.
I like how you see feel the same way. Like when I'm really in the mode of inspiration and like where I'm drawing it from, it's almost like you just have to open your eyes. And
Hmm.
like whether it's like you're passing like for right now it's spring and so the blossoms are coming out and how does that contrast with something else? And like you said, just looking at the sky and you're like, it's not just blue, it's like a million different colors. So
Yeah, yeah,
it is a lot about just opening your eyes to what's around you. Do you
yeah.
live more rurally or are you in a big city?
I'm in a big city, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, well, Malaysia is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. So,
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. So I'm in the middle of traffic all the time. So I feel like I really wish I lived near nature, or when you walk out of your door, there's like a beautiful outdoor, I don't know, an outdoor area to explore, or like the beach. But I don't have that. I have to go maybe drive 4 hours to a beach or 2 hours to a beach.
yeah. So, where do you get the inspiration for nature? You just have to find the little pockets of it, I guess.
Yes, I have plants at home. So but I guess like when I go out sometimes, and even when I go to like I live in a condo, so I have like the view of like the roads and the sky, and I guess I'm really blessed that I have a very good view of the sunset. So I love sunsets. So I think that's one of my inspirations as well for color palettes.
Yeah, the sunset. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great inspiration. I can see that completely. Well, that pop of gold is almost like the sun glimmering as it's setting, huh?
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, that might be it.
There you go. So you started back up with watercolor, and I see you mix the different mediums quite often. What's your
Mhm.
process? Like, and I love also one of my favorite things about what you do is like this kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but like it's centered on the page, like, and there's
Oh, right, right.
around your work. So
Yeah.
it's like this little gem sitting on the paper. Like, what's your process and the materials that you love to use?
Yeah, so I started with watercolor actually because that was what I had at home during the pandemic when I wanted to paint, and then I started to include more tools, more mediums, I suppose. And so I for paper I think it's a mix of watercolors and sometimes acrylics. But I've also discovered that just watercolor alone is very beautiful on its own, and you can have that almost acrylic-like thickness with watercolor
Huh.
just without adding so much water. So yeah, so my process is usually I think of, sometimes I think of what kind of colors I want to use, or sometimes I don't actually have the full color palette in my mind. I just, wing it as I go. I might start with maybe I want like a Payne's gray, like a blue, and then I add on from there, and I just go with whatever I think complements that look. And yeah, so I do a lot of like the first layers are normally for me putting colors down, and then I will go back and maybe add more marks or add in more layers and textures. Yeah, stuff like that.
more thickness and opacity. I noticed that. Yeah, there
Yeah,
is
yeah,
there is a contrast between the translucency and then the opacity as you build up those layers. It's really
yeah,
beautiful. I notice you use your sketchbook a lot. Do you use
yeah.
that as a reference? Like I see you like mapping out little color palettes and like just sketch. It's almost like the mode of a grid is seems to
Uh-huh.
be a natural outlet for you.
Yeah, I feel that I don't know, there's something about the tiny, four little square grids that
Yeah.
make me feel very relaxed when I paint as compared to one large painting. But I do the grids mostly just for color exploration, or just to play, have fun, test out colors together. So, and it's also because sometimes I feel like I have a lot of, I don't know whether creative energy is the word. So having four things help me to spread it all out, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
right. I know that's why I love the grid as well, is because or if I'm not working on a grid, I'm usually working on several paintings at one time.
Yeah,
One mark
yeah,
informs the other mark. And so it's like, okay, I like how this works. Now, what if I like reversed the amount? Like if this is blue and a little bit of orange, what if I did a lot of orange and a little bit of blue? Like,
yeah, yeah. You
like
test it out.
the grid or multiple pieces for that reason is like your brain starts working in these like what if possibilities.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's
it's
exactly
really,
it. Yeah.
yeah, you can really play with it that way, but that's a lot of fun. Tell me more
Yeah.
about play and the meaning of play in your life. And like, I'm hearing this often. Most of the people
Mhm.
who are participating in the Virtual Art Summit are like, the theme really resonated with me, which is very delightful for me because I know that it's going to resonate with everyone who's participating because we need play so much right now. And not just in our art, but in life in general. So talk to me
Yeah.
more about like, why did it resonate with you and what advice do you have about play?
Yeah, so play is like it's a very personal thing for me because I think that when I first started painting, like during the pandemic, I wasn't thinking about even creating an Instagram account for my art. I was just doing it for fun, because it was therapeutic for me. I really enjoyed it. And there were no expectations or boundaries that I set when I was doing it. And I think once I started to sell my art, I think that being a perfectionist as well, I put a lot of pressure on myself. And initially, I would get very frustrated, especially, when you're spending hours painting on a canvas, and at the end of it, you're not happy with it. And I would just get really frustrated. I used to throw canvases away, which I learned later on. You don't have to. You can actually put them aside and go back and rework them. But I think that, yeah, that kind of, for a while, I had a bit of a fear of painting because I was afraid that I lost it or that, I didn't enjoy it anymore. But when I learned to just let go of that expectation of how I needed it to turn out, I realized that I could create in a much more like freer way. And I think the expectations that I put on myself and on my work had been like boundaries that I set, and it restricted me from really like coming through and yeah. So I think that play is really important for every artist, to allow your inner self to just come out, explore. And I think that like a lot of times we're afraid of making mistakes with our art. And so in my art, nowadays I try to just allow myself to make mistakes, just play, have fun, allow the process to be what it needs to be.
Yeah, but then they're not really mistakes, they're just part of the journey.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right. And the perfectionism really hits hard for a lot of people, especially those who want to sell their work. That changes the whole objective of creating. Now you're like, oh, I need an end product. And like you said, it goes from why you fell in love with the creative mode in the first place.
Mhm.
It changes everything to be thinking about a product rather than the process. And I know I think it's been a very similar conversation with almost everyone that we've talked for the virtual art summit is
Mhm.
how to shift from that perfectionist mode, from thinking that you've got to get it right or it's a waste of time, to
Mhm.
I'm just here for the process. And in the process we do end up with product. There's no doubt about
Yeah,
it. Like you said, you
yeah,
don't have to throw away something because it didn't turn out. Turn it over. Don't look at it for a week or two or even
yeah,
months. Paint over it. Do whatever you've got to do and let that inform the
yeah,
next decision. It's
yeah,
really
yeah, I
hard to let
agree.
go of that perfectionism, though.
It is. And especially because I'm the kind of person where I like to finish what I start in the moment, and I don't like to go back to things. So I always feel the need to, I have to finish this now. And I think that was one of the mindsets, the wrong mindsets I had when it came to art, like you were saying. Um, so for me, I think when I allowed myself to just have fun and not think about, oh, I'm going to create this to sell. When I stopped thinking about that, then I felt like I was able to just play and try all these bold marks, bold, crazy marks, not caring if it was going to be pretty or pretty bad. And yeah.
Did you see a big push in your artwork to evolve to the next place when you finally let go and were able to do that?
Yes, I think so. So I think at the start of this year, I started painting a lot more because the previous years I was pretty busy with my, I had like a freelance copywriting job that I was doing. So art was always on the side for me. And so I wasn't able to create as much. And so when I went full time, I started to paint a lot more. And I think that creativity came back again. That joy to play and have fun just came back.
Well, without the time constraints, I'm sure that opens up. But for some people, more time just means freezing up more.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I feel like just put yourself in that playful mood. What are some of the most playful things that you do for yourself as you're creating it? That advice that you can give to our listeners, like, give us an example. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but give us an example of something fun. Besides, I know the grid is a great solution, but
Like when I'm creating,
yeah.
how I get into that relaxed mode is I like to play music that I feel gets me in the mood for creating. Usually sometimes it's pop music or instrumentals. And I just kind of go with, I try different tools. So I love using a lot of random tools when I paint, not just brushes, but like wedges or even butter knives and
Yeah.
like the brush when you dye your hair, like the hair dye
Yeah.
brush. So all those random things. And I feel like that adds a lot of fun into the art that we're creating. And sometimes I just like squeeze the paint directly from the tube directly onto the paper. And I like how that the spontaneous mark that it makes, because it's not like a clean thing where you apply with a brush. It's
Right.
random. So I feel like these are little elements of play that do come in. And I think that as the more I paint, the more I realize that I kind of like my work to be not so clean and not so neat. I like it imperfect. I like it with all these edge stuff. Yeah.
I think that's why there's so much interest in your work, because if it was clean lines, it wouldn't have that depth, and it definitely has depth. So I love that about your work. Okay, I'm going to ask you my favorite question that I love to ask everyone, and I'm going to put you on the spot because everyone is like, huh, but maybe right off the bat, what is your big audacious dream?
My big audacious dream. Well, I do have a lot, but I think one of it is I love to travel. So I would love to travel the world and be able to either live in a few countries for maybe a few months and do like workshops there or, sell paintings there. I think that would be really lovely, but yeah, that might be in the future. I don't know. I hope.
That's a great plan. I love that. Like, what more could we ask for as artists who put our whole work is in our art? So we have, not everyone has the freedom to move about, but like, especially because you're so young, it's like, it's the time to just go and explore and take our art on the road. That would be really exciting. I love that dream. Yeah. I think I'm almost at the place where I could do it too, because my youngest is in high school. So we're almost, I can do it too. My husband, he can take a break from me for a little bit.
You should come to Malaysia.
I would love to. You see so many really exciting things about Kuala Lumpur, so it would be a really interesting and probably unexpected trip, because I know less about Malaysia than I do about some of the other Southeast Asian countries. But I love that the internet, Instagram, has helped us connect. That's such an exciting thing. And we have artists from around the globe this time. We have one in China even. So it's like really fun to connect with so many different points of view and voices. And I'm so glad, Carissa. Make sure that you tell us, how do we find you on Instagram? It's Wildflower, right?
Yeah, Wildflower Culture.
Wildflower Culture, and everyone can find Carissa and her gorgeous art there, and of course the Virtual Art Summit. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me. It's been so fun chatting with you as well.